those which we hold sacred cannot remain. Such is the natural order of things. Whether through time, conflict, or fate, the treasure shall be lost. The Ark of the Covenant, the Library of Alexandria, every pair of sunglasses I have ever owned, all Ozymandias-like monoliths lost to the annals of time. However, the affliction that permeates through my psyche, the debilitating, cold indifference of nothingness that looms over my attempts at just being, is a probably kind of mid-anime movie from 2007, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. One of the best-selling manga of all time, instant recognizability through iconic style, and mostly funny meme status, a cultural behemoth in every measurable sense, and a foundational inspiration to its contemporary counterparts. What's surprising to me, however, is how long it actually took for Jojo to receive a proper anime adaptation. In the decades since its initial publication in 1986, there have been a wide array of spin-off manga, light novels, games, doujins where Jotaro and Kakuin get married and have a baby through an egg, etc. But until David Productions' ongoing adaptation of the series began in 2012, there had only been a few attempts at making an anime for Jojo. Studio APPP, another Pushpin Planning, who I mostly know for Golden Boy, released a series of OVAs in 1993 and 2000 respectively, adapting the series' third part, Stardust Crusaders. These OVAs left out quite a lot and rearranged the events of Part 3, particularly how the 1993 OVA adapts the second part of Stardust Crusaders, so whenever they get to Egypt, and the 2000 OVA adapts the first part of Part 3, and they market it as a prequel, even though they just, willingly release the part out of order. Kind of weird. And while I definitely prefer the newer, more cohesive David Production version of Part 3, I think the OVAs are special in their own right. I think they're very representative of the time period in which they came out, and honestly have really nice animation, especially the 93 OVA because they used classic cell animation for that one. There's no current readily available method to purchase these aside from secondhand on eBay. Luckily, you can find re-uploads on YouTube in a surprising amount of different languages and with fan translations available. However, the subject of today's video wasn't as lucky in the preservation department. 2007 was a milestone year for Jojo. It marked not only the 20th year of publication for the Jojo manga, but also its author, Hirohiko Araki's 25th year working as a mangaka. As a means to commemorate the occasion, Studio APPP was brought in again, this time to make a theatrical movie. The film was set to adapt the first part of the manga, sharing the same title, Phantom Blood. Now, if you're watching a video about an obscure piece of Jojo lost media, I can bet you're probably already aware of the story of Phantom Blood. Unless you're a part skipper, then please, what are you doing? Go watch or read it. It's really short. It'll take you 3 hours, please, I beg you. But, TLDR, Jonathan, Jojo, Joestar, must defeat the charismatic vampire Dio Brando in order to save not only himself, but the world. Short and simple, yet compelling, makes sense for a movie adaptation. Now, to add on to the mystery of what this movie actually was and what happened to it, I'm seeing conflicting information as to who even directed it. On IMDb, Junichi Yamamoto is credited as the director, but on the official JoJo wiki, Junichi Hayama is listed as the director. Junichi Hayama is a pretty legendary animator and character designer, having worked on tons of series since the 80s, including the JoJo OVAs. On the other hand, Junichi Yamamoto is a horror director, having made films such as Meatball Machine and Violator. Now, upon hearing the title Meatball Machine, there's no way I couldn't check it out, and frankly, I was sold within the first 5 minutes. It's actually a really well-made, low-budget body horror film that I do recommend for anyone that's interested in that genre. I couldn't really find much info about why there's this discrepancy. I think it may have something to do with a supposed original director that left during the production of the movie, but upon reading archived websites from around that time, it's safe to say that Junichi Hayama was the director of the film. That is definitively true. The cast was stacked, featuring the vocal talents of Katsuyuki Konishi as Jonathan, Hikaru Midorikawa as Dio, and Rikia Koyama as Will Zeppeli. Several of these actors were actually reprising their respective roles for this movie from the Phantom Blood PS2 game that had come out a year prior. I find it really interesting that they did a game adaptation of Phantom Blood before ever doing an anime. It's actually usually the other way around. You know, they do the anime first and then the game tie-in. It's almost like this movie was a movie tie-in for a game, almost, in a weird way. Composer Mark D'Ambrosio helmed the movie's score, and the hip-hop group Sold Out made the movie's theme song, Voodoo Kingdom. While the group is now defunct, they actually had a friendly and collaborative relationship with Hirohiko Araki, going as far as having the names of their songs, Weka Pipo and Magenta Magenta, used as the names for two of the characters in JoJo's 7th part, Steel Ball Run. Luckily, Voodoo Kingdom is not lost and is readily available on YouTube and is, by all accounts, a certified hood classic. Even though there were reports of internal production issues, everything was shaping up for the movie to turn out well, if the quality of the test pilot from the 2004 Tokyo International Anime Fair was anything to go off of. And with that, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood hit theaters on February 17th, 2007. The release was exclusive to Japan, which is nothing out of the ordinary as it's fairly standard practice for dubbed and subtitled versions of anime films to come out after the Japanese version. Little did international fans know, however, that the first ever animated adaptation of Phantom Blood would never reach them. It would never even reach the majority of Japanese fans either, as the film was exclusively screened in theaters and never received a DVD release. The greatest point of contention around this movie is why it never received a home video release. Even the most bottom of the barrel trash movies that bomb horribly receive a home release or get thrown up on Tubi. Shout out Tubi, that's how I watched Meatball Machine. Can't hate on Tubi, it's free. So why didn't a freaking JoJo's Bizarre Adventure movie get one? While there's no definitive answer, a likely factor would be the film's poor reception. As a result of never receiving any home release, this movie has only ever been seen by theatergoers in Japan in 2007. So the sample size and language barrier limit the information we can gather. Like I'd mentioned before, there are a number of archived websites and blogs from 2007 made by people with first-hand accounts reviewing the movie. For the majority of us, however, there is some footage to work with. There is the test pilot, like I had mentioned earlier, 2 trailers, a teaser, and a full official trailer, and around 16 minutes of recovered footage from the movie. We'll talk about how that was found later. Although I said earlier that the story of Phantom Blood lends itself nicely to being made into a movie, it's not exactly short enough for the entire story to fit. Changing and cutting things is part of the adaptation process, and Araki has been very forward about his desire for people to change his work as they see fit. However though, the changes made for Phantom Blood are detrimental to the experience as they omit major characters and plot elements that fundamentally make Phantom Blood what it is. Notably, Speedwagon is outright not in the movie at all. Imagine that. The greatest hype man of all time, just completely gone. Tarkus and Bruford, the most notable antagonists aside from Dio, were reduced to being the same type of fodder enemies as Dio's other zombies. The omission of these fan-favorite characters is not only disappointing, but detracts from the themes of Part 1 and JoJo as a whole. In the past, Araki has said that the theme of JoJo is an affirmation that humanity is wonderful. As each JoJo battles to overcome the insurmountable evil that they face, it is the indomitable human spirit that allows them to prevail. We see throughout the series that each JoJo's capacity for good has an infectious quality, influencing and inspiring those around them, and even converting previously villainous characters to the side of good. The interactions with Speedwagon, Tarkus, and Bruford were all prime examples of this concept. Jonathan was able to show Speedwagon that he has so much more potential in life than that of a lowly street thug. Bruford renounces his contempt for humanity after Jonathan shows him compassion in their battle, and it's Tarkus that gives Jonathan the harsh realization that unfortunately not everyone can be changed and have to be taken down. Oddly enough though, the Japanese comedy duo Speedwagon, comprised of Jun Itoda and Kazuhiro Ozawa, were the voices for Wang Chan and Dario Brando. So, technically speaking, Speedwagon is in the movie. Must have been really weird for those guys, like why do they want us to be in this movie? Who's Speedwagon? The 90-minute runtime was clearly not enough, as even story elements that did make the final cut were either muddled or glossed over. The Hamon power system, or Ripple as it more accurately translates to from Japanese, is not given much explanation as to how it actually works, and is more or less treated like a general power-up that you often see in other anime, instead of the actual concentrated breathing technique that produces energy similar to that of the sun, the rays from the sun, in order to directly combat the supernatural vampirism of Dio. Dio's vampire abilities are equally underexplained. Like, he apparently just creates the castle that he goes to at the end of Phantom Blood with his mind, like with his psychic powers, instead of just like taking over a castle like how he did in the original story. Like, he just manifested an entire castle, I guess. And the Aztec mysticism, like that of the stone mask that gives Dio his powers, are supposedly only represented by the inclusion of a cutscene from the Phantom Blood PlayStation 2 game that came out the year prior. God, it really is a game tie-in movie. One of my favorite aspects of the early parts of JoJo is its focus on the supernatural. I love stands, and they ultimately are a more dynamic power system than Hamon, but I really love the inclusion of things like vampires and zombies in parts 1 and 2, plus it really fits the gothic setting of Phantom Blood. So while it's hilarious to just have video game cutscenes in your movie, it'd be pretty hard to take it seriously. It seems that with this movie, they either just outright cut things entirely or change them ever so slightly. Since characters like Strizo and Dyer also aren't in the movie, Will Zeppeli has a much more involved role in the fighting to fill in for their absence. This shift in characterization from his wise teacher archetype displeased viewers, with one fan describing him like the boss of Catfish. I'm sure this isn't an accurate translation, but I think I understood what he meant. You know, I get you. I get you. From everything that I've gathered, the movie mostly focuses on the conflict between Jonathan and Dio, and everything else around that is just the SparkNotes version of those events. And even the main conflict seems like the SparkNotes version, as Dio's motivations are barely explored, which would give the viewer an impression that he's just evil for the sake of being evil without actually understanding why he is the way he is and why he seeks out world domination. I wasn't able to find box office numbers, but from what I can tell, the movie was also a commercial failure. Truly hard to believe, especially during a time when fans of the series should have been celebrating. Phantom Blood was seemingly a disaster. After its limited theatrical run, that would be it for this ill-fated film. With the movie already fading away after barely seeing the light of day, rumors began to spread as to why. People online point to interviews from Araki where he describes how awful the movie was and how much he hated it, leading many to think that he was responsible for its cancellation. The issue with this is that there is absolutely zero sources to back up any of these supposed claims. Araki is actually very public in comparison to other mangaka when it comes to doing interviews, and you know, for all of his eccentricities, he's actually very transparent when it comes to how he feels about things. So surely an interview where he rips this bastardization of his work a new one would be well documented, right? Well, the answer is no. This is part of a much larger issue that permeates the JoJo community, where people have a tendency to just make up bogus claims about things that Araki has never said. The actual reason for why the movie never got a wider release seems to have been a supply chain and distribution issue, where APPP weren't actually able to find anyone to officially localize it. I can't imagine that the poor reception to the movie would garner much demand, so they probably just saw it as a lost cause. Little did they realize that, regardless of its quality, passionate communities of people with the shared interest of preservation would begin to seek the movie out. Like I said earlier, the film isn't completely lost, as there are several sources of footage out there. There's the test pilot, which is not entirely representative of the final cut, as the visuals are quite different and it features scrapped elements like an appearance from Speedwagon. According to Mango Motion, the individual who uploaded it onto YouTube in 2019, they found the footage on an old DVD RW, which was used as a backup for the original. It was with the help of fellow YouTuber Notelu that they were able to restore the quality of the footage, as the DVD had begun to degrade an artifact. I don't think people like this get enough credit, because if it were up to the studios, old movies and shows like this would be just left to rot in obscurity, as Phantom Blood currently is. There are 2 trailers available, a teaser, which came with the 2006 PS2 game, that goddamn PS2 game, and a full official trailer. Although the test pilot and trailers do look quite different from one another, I think it's interesting to note how reminiscent their art style is to the source material. The artwork for the Jojo manga has evolved considerably over its lifetime, and the anime adaptation often takes liberties with its stylization. Araki's style at the time, during the middle of Steel Ball Run, was a far cry from the Fist of the North Star inspired look of Phantom Blood. So it's actually quite nice to see homage paid to the original in this way. Now, the most substantial source of footage that's currently available is roughly the first 16 minutes of the movie. The footage is pretty rough, however, as there are several scenes that are replaced with storyboards, and there's no dialogue. The reason being that the footage was uploaded by a student from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco as a project for their audio design class, a class which happened to be taught by the movie's composer, Mark D'Ambrosio. This was in 2012, and little is known as to how or why he had access to this footage. I wasn't able to find any comments from him anywhere, and although he does have contact information on his website, I don't really want to bother him with questions about one of the many projects that he's worked on, let alone one from almost 17 years ago. He probably has the words Jojo and Phantom Blood marked as spam in his email, and as I can imagine, many people have had the same idea to ask him about the movie as I do. At this point, digging for more information seems to be a fruitless endeavor. During a 2022 interview with Junichi Hayama, the interviewers, Dmitry Saraki and Mateo Watsky, directly asked him what happened to the movie. Just straight up, what happened to it? He was quoted as saying, "I don't want you to see me angry and pissed off, so it's better if I don't answer this question." Now, I don't think he's being 100% serious, but from other interviews that I've seen from him, it's clear that he's a fan of JoJo and deeply respects the work. So it's no surprise that he would be angry over the fact that something he worked so hard on has just been forgotten. At this point, the only way I could see any more footage or material being found is if there was an internal leak, but even that would be troublesome as APPP closed their studio in 2021, and the film was probably locked away by its copyright holder Shueisha. Even if the movie isn't good, it serves as a testament to how important media preservation really is. We see it all the time today where studios will take down games and shows from their digital platforms for arbitrary reasons. Even if someone doesn't want to buy a particular thing, the option for it to be bought should always be available. So even though that it seems like the JoJo Phantom Blood movie will never see the light of day, it has to at least mean something to the people involved who worked on it, that so many people almost 17 years later care about it that much. It certainly couldn't have felt good that people didn't care about it back then, as a lot of things do undergo, a renaissance. We see that all the time. Maybe this will end up being a Samurai Cop kind of situation where a film reel will just be randomly found in, well, like a castle or something. And so that is my take on the Phantom Blood movie. This has been one that I've been aware of for a while now. I'm a pretty big fan of lost media, and so I thought it'd be fun to cover a specific topic that I found really interesting. There are a lot of lost media topics that I really love and that I would love to cover eventually someday. I just don't want to do too many in a row. If there is an aspect of this movie that I forgot about or didn't mention, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all the likes and comments that people left on the Chainsaw Man video. It was really, again, I'm very appreciative of that. And like I said before, and like I'll say again, thank you for watching.